Oh, you got your jewelry? I got my tiny ones. I'm having penis envy right now.
I gotta show up for the boys, you know?
Explain the pants.
I was afraid. Yeah,
Explain the pants. That is the only thing you
pants?
No.
You don't like the parachute pants?
Yeah, that's the only picture I saw. And I'm like, what is this man wearing?
I love those pants, man. I feel like they made me look like a Street Fighter character, you know?
Absolutely. Go eat the chicken underneath the trash can. What the fuck?
I think that's the wave. Like, you know, we got to look more like characters nowadays, I think, than just like straightforward.
We really do, but I kind of overdid it with the stereotypical alcoholic Slav, which I to an extent am. But now, if I talk about anything except Eastern Europe, everybody just turns off, or, you know, addiction and shit. But I'm fixing it. I'm slowly fixing it. But speaking of being a Slav, you were in Croatia at the same time. I believe when I was in the US, my fucking chat spammed me like crazy. Why the fuck didn't you call me, motherfucker?
When I went to Croatia?
Yeah. Because the Balkans are just like one village, and I would have.
I know. I didn't want you to think less of me that I went to Croatia. I mean, I guess it's like more acceptable than like, you know, Albania or Bosnia or anything like that. Of course,
no, I love Croatia and Bosnia. Come on, Jesus. I'm a proper Yugoslav, which doesn't include Albania, of course. Love how this is starting the exact same way as last time.
Of course it doesn't include Albania. Albania was, Enver Hoxha was too radical. Tito was a revisionist who didn't understand the vision.
Absolutely.
That the Maoist leadership of Enver Hoxha represented.
Until he split with the Chinese too. He started supporting his own militias in some random African country.
Did you enjoy it at least? Did you have time to enjoy it because you're so content-pilled?
Yeah, no, I did. It was amazing. It was beautiful. It's kind of crazy that it's like they just straight up live in fortresses out there still. Like they're it's kind of wild. I went to the Communist Museum, the Red Museum in Croatia, which is funny because like obviously Croatia is EU. You know, even though it's like one of the lowest of the totem pole states in the EU, it feels like it's like the ugly duck of the EU. They like rarely ever help them out, it seems. They really help them develop, but like because I think Tito is Croatian, that there is like still a little bit of reverence there.
Is
for
that
him.
What the Croats kept saying? Is that what the Croats wrote?
I was just waiting for it. I was waiting for it.
No, because it's very funny. You either have like nationalist Croatians, which are so nationalist that they hate Tito, so they're like, he was definitely not Croatian, and then you have nationalist Croatians that are so nationalist that everybody is Croatian, so even our enemies are Croatian. Otherwise, they would not have been able to defeat us. So Tito is also Croatian. Yeah.
No, I think that's literally it though. Like it's because Tito is like from there technically originally that like there's obviously a little bit of tension with like, I mean they did talk a lot about like how he liberalized the economy. That was a good thing, and how great it was even in the fucking communism museum. But like overall there was like definitely a lot more reverence for him there than I would have expected. Like I thought it was going to be like all garbage. Like he was a bad guy. The nationalists were the heroes. I can't believe how violent the partisans were. Like, there was a little bit of.
They didn't pull.
There was a little bit of. No, they did do that. Like you go, there's like a black curtain that you pass behind, and inside of that area is like the dark side of communism.
Oh my god.
There's a lot of like cool stuff that obviously the glorious Yugoslavian Republic was able to put together in terms of like medicine, things like that, you know. And like all the cool things that they built, but there is like the dark side of communism area in the museum where they talk about like how maybe they did a little bit too much killing, and also they don't really specify. No, literally they don't specify that it was like the fascists. They will be like, oh, anyone who was declared an enemy of the state was branded as like a collaborator, and it's like, I'm sure that happened every now and then with like an angry neighbor. You know, who's like, yeah, this guy's a fucking Nazi, even though it's like, it's because he's not trimming his hedges or whatever. But like, but beyond that, I think like the, you know, broad majority were fucking fascist collaborators that were getting brutally murked.
I had an educator of sorts that was Serbian at a point in my life. And she told me about, she was older, and she was telling me about how her dad was imprisoned during Yugoslav times. and it was like a good lengthy period imprisonment too. And she always like skirted around the topic of why exactly he was in prison until I kind of, we discussed long enough. And then we found out that he would write up basically like poetry and short stories in which every other minority population around Yugoslavia that was not Serbian, he was compared to like rats and fleas and shit. And it was just hyper racist.
Wow.
And I was like, okay,
so
fantastic.
Yeah. Serbians by and large are not known for that sort of thing, so I'm just really confused.
I know.
Of course, you would be Turk. I'm fucking right. No, interestingly, Tito is buried in Belgrade, and that museum of Yugoslavia was built before he had died. I'm guessing the one in Croatia was actually probably built after socialism, quote unquote, fell in the state. But I mean, we've had this conversation 1,000 times here on the show. You have quite progressive thinking people, which are like Yugo nostalgic, etc., etc. In all of the post-Yugoslav republics, and then you have the nationalists, and it's a very weird borderline family thing here. It's like if the majority of your grandparents were on this side, then that's who you're going to support. If the majority of your family were communists, most likely the grandparents pass that down on the kids, who are most likely your parents, and then that's who you end up being. It's kind of become tribal, less than what you actually believe in, but more like picking a team, because we've quite literally embraced, and that's in most countries that have gotten out of socialist experiment, if we want to call it that. Like we just like genuinely feel like it's over. This new system won, and we gotta deal with it. To an extent, we've naturalize it more than even countries that never even tried to make a similar thing. But I
think one of the worst things I experienced in Croatia was like, I think it was like the Ottoman gene in me, where I would like get to a hotel and there would just be like a dude that's tall for no fucking reason, who was like at the reception desk, right? And in my mind, I immediately was like, well, that guy would make a phenomenal basketball player. So I'd ask him, be like, so do you play basketball? He'd be like, no, I play handball, or no, I play volleyball, or water polo's big in Croatia. And I was like, what a fucking waste of talent, dude. Like, if Yugoslavia was still around, like they would be so dominant this Olympic season. Like they would have probably beat the American team.
But they had a fantastic basketball. Even back then, they were great.
Yeah. Serbia was now third. Croatia keeps being first, second, third in football. Like the MVP of the entirety of the U.S. is a guy from a random fucking village in the south of Serbia that eats pizza and drinks rakia every fucking night. It's just something about it. I don't know. It's a culture of sport that was kept also from back in Yugoslavia, etc., etc. But we're also just very, very fucking tall. But Hasan, you really missed a chance with saying, I was an Ottoman, like the Ottoman in me kept seeing all these tall Slavs. You missed a chance to say they would make some fine janissaries.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. That's what I was
gonna fuck.
No, that is what I'm saying. Like I immediately, when I see like a tall Slav, I think like I got to put him to work. Like I like.
Pledge allegiance to the Sultan.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Immediately, like the epigenetic memories kicked in, and I thought it was like a massive waste. Like,
hilariously, you probably have some of that blood in you, Hasan.
Yeah, of course.
Definitely.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, I'm 6'4". Like not many Turks are this pale and also 6'4".
I'll teach you Cyrillics one day, trust me. I mean, Hakim wasn't a Serbian guy, some leader during the Ottoman times.
My favorite.
In Iraq as well.
Some Serbian guy was made a pasha and then given Iraq to rule over, or at least the Walai of Baghdad. So for in the middle of the 1800s, some Serbian guy was, he probably did a better job than any of our current politicians, goddamn.
There is probably like a 0.0001% chance that all three of us are related, and I am so here.
It's way higher than this, my guy.
It's the communist genome. It was race science all along. Class consciousness comes from the blood.
Do you want to know?
Fuck dialectical materialism. Honestly, like that stuff is nonsense. We should be talking about this.
Like the fuck is a dialect?
Dude,
I don't understand it.
You think the racist epigenetic memeing happens only in the Balkans? Iraq is a melting pot, but far longer back than the US or any other country is generally. And the relative populations that have passed through are just generally whatever the fuck conqueror comes in and out, or people who are escaping some invasion or genocide or whatever, right? So at a certain period of our history, we had a lot of Armenians and Georgians in Iraq.
Why were there a lot of Armenians?
Yeah, I wonder
We
why.
don't Hakim, I told you don't mention the fucking Armenians to the Turk, okay? Jesus
Exactly right.
It's so funny because like people still will constantly say I deny the Armenian genocide, like constantly, which is crazy because like I never
Because you
have.
do.
But,
Yeah, and I love Srebrenica. I'm like, I wake up and I masturbate to Srebrenica. Like, same shit.
Yeah.
It's just,
People are ridiculous.
it's wild because there's always people who do deny like the indigenous genocide.
Yeah,
you know what I
exactly,
mean? Like they just don't. That's like, oh well, they were barbarians. We had to tame them.
Exactly right. It's the white man's burden.
Or deny the ongoing atrocities in Gaza, like the genocide in Gaza.
Exactly right. What I was getting at though was on my mom's side, there are a lot of pale people. There are a lot of like ginger stuff like that. My dad's side is the exact inverse. So because of this, I'm like, where did this happen? And instead of trying to basically come up with a logical conclusion that sometimes there are ginger people in Iraq, I mean, Izzat Duri, the former vice president of Iraq during the Saddam era, he was a ginger, for example. Instead of just being like, yeah, this just exists, they came up with this fanciful tale of having Georgian ancestry somewhere up there. And I half believe it because of just shit that I've seen in my family and weird traditions that on my mom's side. But
like Georgians also don't really look like they don't look that
That's the thing.
Slavic in my
Not
like,
at
they
all.
look fucking Turkish.
Yeah.
My race science brain goes fucking crazy when I see a Georgian. I can spot a Georgian fucking 10 kilometers away.
And that's the thing.
If I would see Hakim, like I would be like, okay, maybe it's a darker skinned Serbian guy or Croatian guy. No, like unironically. But a fucking Georgian, no. Georgians are just built different. Their alphabet is different. Everything Georgian is different except the red wine. That shit is based.
But yeah. No, what I was getting at is that the memes are, oh yeah, blue eyes and tall and blonde. I'm like, have you seen a Georgian? Have you seen?
Yeah.
you go to.
They are not.
Yeah, my
they're
God.
not built like that at all. I mean, Stalin was a manlet.
Yeah, generally.
They're so
but he
fucking
was
hairy.
also-
They're like the missing link, you know? Okay, that was too much. That was too much. So, welcome to yet another episode of the Deprogram, my beautiful, beautiful children. And what an episode it is. We're joined by a very familiar face, friend of the show, hated by many, but loved by more. The only Himbo with a brain, the only Turk allowed on this show, Hasan. Welcome and thank you for coming. I knew it. It was too easy. But no, thank you, and thank you for coming and welcome, Hasan. Please tell those in our audience who have been living under a rock where they can find your work.
What's going on, everybody? I am live streaming every day at Twitch, twitch.tv/Hasanabi from 11 a.m. Pacific time all the way to usually 8 p.m. Pacific time. I'm also on Instagram at Hasan D. Piker, on Twitter at Hasan the Hun, on TikTok at Hasan D. Piker. You know, I'm on every platform doing propaganda.
Man's got a game algorithm, of course. I love it.
Fantastic. Let's start, I guess, chronologically. What was the DNC experience like, especially the mad contrast between stargazing fangirling happening inside the building and the stark reality being put on display by the protesters outside? Spare no details.
So I started off the DNC journey by attending the Palestinian protest the first day. And, I definitely had a lot more fans at the Palestinian protest than inside of the DNC, but I was genuinely shocked that I even had any fans inside of the DNC to begin with. But yeah, I would say that right off the jump, the vibes were, how do I put this? A little too electric, if you know what I mean. Like the vibes were too good inside of the DNC. Like and not because like there is an ongoing genocide that they are facilitating, the Democratic Party is, but like the vibes were too electric, even from like it didn't match up with the polls, right? Because during the election season, I like to put on my analyst hat on every now and then and like speak to these matters from the perspective of like someone who's just simply looking at the Democratic Party's chances of winning beyond, you know, obviously my own personal moral disagreements with the Democratic Party or my policy disagreements. Like I try to take a step back and just look at like, is the Democratic Party's chances good, right? Are they going to win? And the way that they were celebrating because like Joe Biden, the carcass, was no longer the candidate, made it seem like they had, you know, 10-point leads in every swing state or something, right? Because for those of you who don't know, I know that this is not a big electoralist community out here. In the United States of America with the Electoral College, like the way that it's presented, the Democrats on national polls need to be at least beating the Republicans by like minimum 5 points for them to be able to actually win the election, right? That's how the calculation works because obviously the Electoral College favors the Republican Party. So that's not where the Democrats are at all. There's definitely momentum. There's like been a 12-point swing from Biden losing to Kamala Harris winning in certain districts. I mean, in certain states. But overall, the energy and the enthusiasm certainly didn't match, like, I would say, what the stark reality is in terms of the election. And the reason why I brought this energy up is because they also kind of had this attitude towards like the Palestinian protesters is like people spoiling the fun.
Yeah.
Like we're having fun. We won already. Like, why can't we celebrate?
My God.
You're like not letting us celebrate our fun. And it is, I mean, it was definitely disheartening to see. And it was very frustrating, especially because there is obviously a election calculation that the Democrats should be making in terms of Gaza as well, beyond the inhumanity, beyond the morality of it all. And yet they are refusing to recognize it for some reason.
No, I was going to say it's have you ever seen the videos of the Scientology conferences or whatever the fuck? That's the vibe I get of it, right? You can't be this positive and have like music groups and whatnot playing. Meanwhile, the single biggest issue that you're facing as a party, really, and internationally, is the question of the genocide happening in Gaza. And instead of like they brought a cop to talk, but they didn't bring a single Palestinian. It's just the optics of it entirely, but not only the optics, but it really betrays their actual political leanings, as if you had a question about it in the first place. But the idea of, the vibes are being ruined. This is just like the Democrats being Democrats. Let's be as performative as we possibly can. We are basically at the same step or one step removed from the Republicans on practically every policy decision. The furthest we're going to do is we're going to pretend to violently decry what's happening, but we'll still let it happen. The wall and the pulling down of women's rights and further, expansion of military nonsense across the world, forward bases operating by the United States, increased funding for Israel, all of this. They don't give a shit, but they'll, pretend to be morally outraged for a minute. Really,
but they're not stupid. They've calculated this, and the current pitch, at least from what I see when it comes to Palestine, is basically, we're doing our best. We're doing our best. What do you want? We're doing our best. It's a very complicated situation. Well, nobody's buying it. That's directly, constantly being informed about the actual situation on the ground in Gaza. But the people that just quote unquote LARPed caring, I believe they will buy it wholesale. Which kind of leads to the next question: do you think there's any chance that the Kamala campaign would actually enforce or even call for a ceasefire deal in Gaza after the last speech? I am at least very doubtful. Feels like they think they've got the elections kind of in the bag, as you said yourself, and see no need to step back from the reddest line imaginable, which is, I don't know, not killing children.
Let me just start off by saying, first and foremost, that foreign policy in the American structure is designed not to be an issue because, I kind of see it as this other world thing that makes this entire system run. And if every American was forced to reckon with that bloodshed on a daily basis, every time they purchased a cheap commodity or they got, jalapeno poppers at Applebee's, they had to think about all of the unequal extraction of both labor and natural resource in the global South and how that is entirely propped up by this incredibly bloody machine of death and destruction, they would probably go either crazy or they would go full tilt fascist, right? They would so for that reason, I think that in American media, there's not a lot of emphasis on foreign policy. It's just bipartisan and it's just happening. Americans, by and large, in my opinion, don't want war, or they at least see themselves as like anti-war people. That's why Donald Trump keeps running on how he's the peaceful dove candidate and how he successfully ran against Hillary Clinton by successfully portraying himself as anti-war, whereas Hillary Clinton was pro-war. You know what I mean? So for that reason, I think like Americans don't want war. They don't really recognize that like permanent war is the only way that we have this comfortable position on the planet in the imperial core. But like for that reason, nobody gives a shit, really. Like it's not like Gaza is not the top priority at all in the minds of a lot of people, even though it is truly heinous and obviously like unimaginably cruel. A lot of people like broadly don't really care about it. They're just against it, right? Like they're against it, but not so much so that they will, they will take a stance against it beyond like maybe participating in the protest if they like heat up again, right? But they're not going to like withhold their votes or whatever. And by and large, the people that do withhold their votes or say that they're going to withhold their votes, like they have a lot of anger and resentment towards. It's like the Bernie bro equation again. They're just basically seen as like spoilers that are fucking up the fun. We have to do harm reduction. We have to do harm reduction. You guys are not letting us do harm reduction. And people are like, but it's like, it doesn't make any sense because like Democrats are the ones doing harm in this situation, whether it be right-wing, a right-wing border proposal that they're pushing forward that Kamala Harris has now also adopted, which I think is like terrible policy, terrible politics in general, or whether it be the continuation of the ongoing genocide in Gaza. They are the ones doing harm, and then they just like keep trying to re-triangulate and be like, well, what about this issue that the Republicans are going to be far worse on? And that is true. Republicans are going to be worse, sometimes marginally, sometimes not by a lot, sometimes by a lot, right? On abortion, reproductive rights restrictions, Republicans are obviously significantly worse. But the number of issues that the Democrats can point to every 4 years is withering away. Because in 2020, I remember Democrats being like, oh, I guess you don't care about migrants. Now they don't say that anymore, if you realize. Why don't they say that? Because they are also advocating for a right-wing border proposal. A Republican-built border proposal. At least under the Obama administration and administrations prior, Democrats would do a little bit of a push and a little bit of a pull. Now they're just pushing. They're just pushing right-wing. And even then, it's the Republicans that are, once again, famously fucking up the equation and not allowing these bills to pass. Like the Republicans are the saving grace. It reminds me of the Obama administration where he tried to cut Social Security and the Tea Party caucus did not allow that to happen. Thank God, because they were so far right. They were like, nah, we're obstructionists. We're not letting Barack Obama cut Social Security. We want to do it ourselves in our way,
Yeah. Even like, and here we're talking about, the classic electorate in the U.S., but if we move and talk to people, even no matter how rare they are, that actually have some, let's use the term, class consciousness to include as wide of a playing field here. Obviously, there's like kind of, even with them, no winning with a lot of the situations. You got, for example, a lot of flack since October for supporting the Palestinian cause, both verbally and financially. Hell, a pretty heavy comment made here on the show even made it to a podcast you used to run, which might have contributed to some of the drama, thanks to your refusal to just piss all over us, which was very kind. But on the other end, now you're getting flack for having gone to the DNC, which you criticized throughout, by the way, especially there, as you just said, total lack of Palestinian representation, the objectively most pressing issue issue of our time. So how do you handle this kind of like eternal left infighting brain rot when it's not about building a practical movement or funnel, but just about who's the most right? It feels like screaming at a wall most of the time, at least to us.
I just don't really care because I feel like it's very marginal and there is no like real broad constituency for that sort of thing. I think leftists just love posturing from their unique position that they've arrived at by reading one book more than you. And that was like the perfect position to be in. I don't really care. I'm a more practical person. I understand, coalition building, and I understand that like everyone has a different method, a different mechanism. But overall, I don't even think like a lot of people have been yelling at me in terms of like going to the DNC. There was one brief moment where I was walking outside of the DNC on one of the nights, and like there was a pro-Palestinian protester outside yelling at all the
fuck. Yeah.
Here's the thing. Okay. He came up to me and he was like, "You're a sellout." And I heard him and I walked back to him and I was like, "What do you mean I'm a sellout? You think I disagree with you?" And he was like, "No, actually I don't." So I was like, "So why the fuck are you calling me a sellout? Like I was at the protest yesterday." And I called him a child, right? And he got really mad at that. And a lot of people in my community and a lot of people like saw that and were like, "Yeah, fuck this guy, he's a loser." But then I thought like, I probably shouldn't have done that at all because he is a body outside of the DNC chirping at people that are leaving the DNC, Democratic Party operatives, and reminding them that like their support for genocide cannot come without cost. Yeah. So I think like overall, despite my immediate reaction and my disagreements with that person, because I do think that like yelling at me over a situation like that is obviously ridiculous. It still doesn't matter because he's there. There's a right way to protest, there's a wrong way to protest, fine. But ultimately, it's good that he's still there. He took the time out and he went and he protested outside of the DNC. So I was like, I shouldn't have reacted that way. I think his heart is in the right place. So that's usually the attitude that I have with leftists in general. Unless they're like a Lurishite or something, you know what I mean? Unless they're like a RevCom guy who's like real culty and real weird.
Which how did the Lorishites like actually are slowly becoming kind of a thing? Even though yes, it's like 15 dudes. We're not even gonna mention the organization, quote unquote organization or whatever. But how is this borderline, at least on Twitter, et cetera, entering the mainstream? Getting invited to shows like it's
CIA.
You think so? Because we've talked like offline with both Hakeem and JT, like. But it's kind of too easy of an answer that it's just a quote unquote inside job. But you think so?
I mean, they did work with like historically they did work with like a lot of the agencies. So I wouldn't be shocked if there's like some remnants of that. Maybe I don't know.
Because like it grew so fast, at least a lot of their accounts. There's absolutely minus 500 consistency on, their ideological viewpoint or whatever. They mostly harp on, not all of them, but they mostly harp on like culture war shit, not really, actual materialism, not to LARP ourselves here. And yet it somehow like, exploded and became bigger and bigger and bigger and was platformed more and more and more, while I'm not able to find a single like individual normal human that's like, "Oh, I'm a big supporter of these guys," or I'm giving money to these guys, etc., etc. And yet it somehow grows. And yes, the easiest answer would be like intelligence agencies or whatever, but it just feels like it's too easy. I want to believe that we're all just like insane, and there's enough insane people to support those guys to actually become a thing. But maybe the answer is
I guess
simple.
also like. It's so much easier to describe to many Americans that are primed against any kind of like Marxist interpretation analysis of the world and are like primed to believe in like good bad dynamics and narratives that like conspiracies are the way that the world works, when like the greatest conspiracy is just right in front of you. They're not like hiding it. It's not they go to fucking Davos, right? But even Davos, even the World Economic Forum, like they think that's like a socialist conspiracy. It's so fucking funny. It's just like these are like all the top billionaires and politicians. It's I think the mind of a Westerner is just so primed against like any kind of class consciousness, any kind of Marxist interpretation, that I think they have a leaning towards that kind of conspiratorial mindset. And I think the Larishites like fill that void for the 11 people that are interested in that sort of thing. I don't know.
I guess, yeah. Let's not waste more time on that. I mean, even though I'll say at first I gave it some benefit of the doubt because I was like, okay, this is a new way of pitching to people who are classically conservative and like involved in, MAGA, et cetera, et cetera. They're just kind of not reinventing the wheel, but there's a specific way you talk to a liberal, a conservative, somebody who defines themselves as apolitical, et cetera, et cetera. The funnels, we've talked about the 700 times. So I'm like, okay, they might be introducing a new approach, but it's not a new approach when you're fucking transphobic as shit and anti-Semitic. That's not a new approach. That's just the ultimate antithesis to everything we're trying to fucking pitch here from the get-go. But speaking of antithesis inside of a single human, Trump was almost shot like a month and a half ago. At least it feels like a month and a half ago to me. It was the most bombastic event of the last 5 years of American politics, I feel at least. And somehow the Dems managed to make it completely irrelevant in a matter of weeks. Probably people listening to this, some of them at least are like, Jesus Christ, that did happen a few months ago. So how do you think that fucking happened?
No, I mean, it was a really weird sequence of events that actually gave me like a glimmer of hope for a brief moment that like the Democrats were going to be marginally more progressive because they demonstrated competence in a way that I've never seen them do. Everyone, like, they responded to public pressure. So many people were like, I fucking am so embarrassed. Like, I don't want to vote for Joe Biden. Please, like, please change this. Please change this. He's a carcass. And the donors also started recognizing, like, potentially Joe Biden might not be a viable candidate, that he was going to lose to Donald Trump. And obviously those guys want to return on their millions of dollars of investment. Nancy Pelosi and establishment Democrats also saw the writing on the wall. And all of a sudden, something incredible happened. They didn't run scared, even though there were still holdouts. Jamie Harrison, DNC chair, and other like flanks within the Democratic Party were still holding out for the classic.
And probably Biden himself. Do you think he was cocky about it, or like he didn't want to leave because of ego, or no?
No, I think it was spite. Yeah. 100%. I think it was pure spite. His circle got smaller and smaller. He didn't have a full cabinet meeting after the month of October. Like, he didn't have a full cabinet meeting even once after October. Like, post October 7th, there was not a single full cabinet meeting. As in, like, the people that had direct access to him got smaller and smaller and smaller over that time frame. And I think that was by design. He was very spiteful. He wanted to, like, hone in. He wanted to bunker down and carry himself across, not the finish line in November, but carry himself across the finish line at the DNC, because he knew that the Democrats have a tendency to just, vote blue no matter who at the end of the day. And if he was able to make it to the DNC, he would have been the candidate, and we'd be hearing about the same exact sentiments from the Democrats that you're hearing about Kamala Harris when people tell you to shut the fuck up about the genocide.
Yeah. So when they changed from Biden over to Kamala, the kind of the new spectacle around it, you think killed off the eternal regurgitation of the assassination attempt against Trump, and it kind of put it in the background.
100%. And I was saying this, like, as soon as it happened, like, I literally was like, there were two things. There was a moment where I was like, if Trump tries to moderate from here on out, like tries to moderate his positions like he did in 2016 when he was appearing as like a more moderate person, even though he had like a lot of crazy things to say about immigration, he could have had a big boost from the RNC, which is why I kept reiterating. I was like, if there's any staffers listening to me, if there's any Democratic Party members listening to me, like, this is the moment. At post RNC, you don't let them get a bump. Trump already fucked up the RNC speech, obviously, by being Trump. But then beyond that, like, they wouldn't get any sort of post-convention bump if you were to cut across the messaging and make everybody forget about the assassination attempt entirely if you were to swap Biden out with Kamala Harris, which they did. And then the other thing that I found very shocking was that they didn't go with Josh Shapiro, because Josh Shapiro was the safety choice, right? Josh Shapiro, governor of Pennsylvania. Democrats love being afraid. He's a bit of a neoliberal himself. called the Palestinian protesters in a state KKK members. But beyond that, which, that's most of the Democratic Party has ridiculous asinine statements like that. But beyond that, he was like, for school choice and a school vouchers program, he worked with the Republicans in the state to push for a school voucher, school choice, like anti-teachers union bill. And he got that across in Pennsylvania, which was devastating, right? But that's exactly the type of person that the Democratic Party would run with if they were running scared, instead of a guy like Tim Walz, who was a fairly progressive governor from Minnesota, who actually demonstrated that with a single seat majority in the Senate, the state Senate, he was able to push for emergency leave, family leave. He was able to do a lot of progressive things, like economically progressive legislation that he passed through. That would lock the Democratic Party, at least on communications, to progressive policies like expanding the child tax credit, like expanding the social safety nets, right? Like, so I thought that's an interesting choice. That was shocking even to me that they did that. And it made me feel like they were at least forcing themselves to be locked down on progressive messaging. This DNC completely cut against that.
Totally. We will have the most lethal army. Holy shit. That was an incredible moment. It was an absolutely incredible moment.
It's poison. Like that kind of rhetoric is it's so poisonous. It's so silly. They are posturing for a moderate voter that like does not really exist. That's not like a real constituency. The party base is comprised of the progressive base, the progressive wing, the anti-establishment progressive wing. They make up like collectively like my audience, I would say, which represents broad swaths of that party, of the party base, make up like 28% of the constituency. It's like the largest voter block, right next to like the vote blue no matter who party loyalists, who happen to be a little bit more right wing on the military, on immigration, on cops and whatnot. But like the reality is that base absolutely exists within the party. They just think that the best possible way of dealing with those voters is by telling them to shut the fuck up and that they're going to go right wing and it doesn't matter. You have to vote for them regardless. And that, if you don't vote for them, if you don't vote for the Democratic Party, then you want fascism to thrive.
Yeah. Do you want Trump to win? Classic.
Something that's always missing from this conversation. It gets very tiring. Parenti wrote a fantastic, basically, as a textbook, essentially, about the nuances of backing political power, financial backing of political groupings within the United States. And the thing is, when people talk about, for example, there's the nuances of this or that particular grouping or voter bloc within, for example, the Democratic Party, people don't realize that, first and foremost, not to get zoom out too far into the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie nonsense. No matter which party is ruling in the United States, they serve the interests of capital. Within the various parties, there's just different interests of the capitalist class that's served by this particular faction or that particular faction. The Democrats have their own interests in that regard, but the reason that the voting blocks at the end of the day don't really matter is because the vast majority of Americans are not voting already enough, not even in large enough numbers, but the vast majority of Americans already don't vote at all. If you were to count the people who don't vote plus the people who vote Republican or whatever the fuck, if a Democrat president were to win, then you have closer to like almost 70%, 75% of the American population that is not for what would eventually become the ruling figure and his or her administration, along with all the nonsense that brings along with it. The Electoral College and their influence, etc., etc. My point that I'm bringing with this is the donors and financial backers of different campaigns within the United States, whether it be Republican or Democrat, are the ones who always and across the board almost exclusively have their interests served, regardless of what the actual base is. So when you see these like Democrat Party loyalists saying X or Y or Z, basically vote no matter what, fascism will triumph if you don't do this, even this very like blind and direct support, just as if they're like supporting a team and without any sort of material or deeper analysis behind it, even that doesn't matter, because even these people's interests or desires aren't what's being listened to. There is no voter base. It is solely that of the donor and also financial backing and underpinning, plus the political kickbacks that they get subsequently after the administration comes in. And that's best explained or illustrated by the fact that in previous election cycles, they would at least pretend to have a program, the Democrats, right? Obama had plenty of bullshit that was fairly quote-unquote progressive that he gave up on the second he was in office. Biden's the same thing. With Harris, though, on the other hand, if it's something that's surprisingly mask off and actually kind of refreshing, she doesn't have any policies that she's running on. If you go on her website, there's nothing fucking written. If you listen to her speeches, it's flip-flopping on every possible decision. The only thing that is consistent is, like you mentioned, the support for further right on the things that the Republicans have already put into place, number one. And number two, the unending support for Israel. And number three, the military-industrial complex, particularly with Taiwan and Ukraine, but particularly and specifically with supporting Israel. When you try to look past this, you realize that there is no other deeper thinking, right? It's just the same forces that were put into motion months before by Biden that will just roll into a Harris presidency without any significant or improvement or even noticeable improvement, I would say. Like pretty much every other Democratic president. I say this kind of like as a person looking from the outside. I've not seen an improvement, really, in even in rhetoric this election cycle. So it feels kind of I don't know.
Yeah, but the wrapping is different, Hakeem, okay? Because you're outside of the US, you don't get it. The wrapping is different. The book cover is different. It doesn't really matter what is inside, because now we all get to celebrate this eloquent, smart black woman. Doesn't matter about the politics. Like, all of these are cliches that I'm about to say, et cetera, et cetera. Because now it's at least not a corpse. That's basically the bit. It's at least not the corpse. But there was a moment, as Hasan said, like there was a moment of potential hope, at least for me, with the VP pick. I was like, okay, this might actually be interesting. But honestly, the DNC, for me, pissed all over that.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's they pick designs at the end of the day. Like they would have. Like, of course they would have.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because like there are a lot of people, even in my community, that are like still libbed up and are like very stoked on Kamala Harris, and they always, Democrats in general, always have this tendency, this weird tendency, and I think it's because like the media has conditioned them, the media has primed them into thinking this way, to say, oh, this is not for me, this is for someone else out there. And it's like, it always blows my mind, because I'm like, but that's not how democracy works, man. Like, if it's not for you and if it's for some other person, then you should make that clear to the Democratic Party that like your vote should be earned. It's not conditional. I mean, it's not. It's not something that they can take for granted, right?
Exactly right.
And that's what's always very frustrating, because I think it's inherently undemocratic to be like, oh no, they have to moderate on this position because there's some guys out there that really want to hear Kamala Harris say we have to have the most lethal military. Yeah, there are. They're on Reddit. They're on Twitter. They're not like a real base of support within the party. That's why I used to always joke about Joe Biden consistently talking about NATO. Like, oh yeah, we did NATO. And I was like, what the fuck? Who in like, who the fuck in like Pennsylvania, who's in Western PA, working at a goddamn oil rig that is like maybe pissed off about Donald Trump for one reason or the other, is like, well, this guy did NATO, so I got to vote for him. The AUKUS vote, the Five Eyes vote, like that's not a real voter base. You're saying that for your fucking donors, okay? You're saying that because you're saying that because you want to be like, listen, we're not rocking the boat, okay? And you're saying that so like your base of support shuts the fuck up about that sort of thing as well. Like the people that normally would be like, wait, what? What? You say the most lethal military? What the fuck? And then people also try to cope and say with post hoc rationalizations that like, well, she's a woman and that's why she needs to come across like she's, not a peaceful dove, or else like she'll get tanked on that issue. And it's really interesting when people make that argument, because Hillary Clinton was a woman and she ran with a similar attitude on American imperialism and how she was going to keep doing wars and it was going to be awesome. And like America has to be, have a muscular military, right? And Donald Trump literally destroyed her on those boundaries, on those terms. Donald Trump was like, I'm anti-Iraq. You went into Iraq. That was bullshit. Now, obviously, the dynamic is different now. Donald Trump was president for 4 years. We already know what that looked like. It wasn't great. So he can't really he can't pivot to a more moderate position in that regard, but he's still trying to actively show to a base of support to voters that there were no new wars under his presidency, and Joe Biden started Ukraine and Joe Biden started Israel. It would have never happened under Trump. And I feel like that is something that the Democratic Party is not like clued in on for some weird reason. They're not seeing that as like a dangerous sign that that could be an effective way of campaigning, especially at a time when Trump does benefit from not being the president, as October 7 happened. And he was like, last time I checked, when matched up against Biden on the issue of Israel, he was winning by like 35 points. He had like 35 points on Biden. So obviously Biden's like wishy-washy. I'm gonna give a stern talking to Benjamin Netanyahu while also bear hugging him and giving him trillions of dollars of fucking weapons every goddamn week as he conducts his genocide. Is an unsuccessful strategy. Like it demonstrably, it was a failure. It was unsuccessful, and it wasn't only because he was old. It was because people kept seeing what he was saying, and people kept seeing what was going on the ground, and we're like, what the fuck? This doesn't match up with what you're saying.
Yeah. Or not hypocrisy. It's a very clear attempt at saying one thing and doing another. He says that he talks the talk because he wants to get the vote, but the reality is that he wants to please the people who are entirely funding and moving along this campaign of his entire political career, be it from the donor side of AIPAC or from the military-industrial complex or whatever else it may be.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're scared. They're scared of rocking the boat in general. It's a classic Democrat tendency to just be like afraid of pushing for any kind of like progressive narrative, even if you're not going to fucking follow through on it. Like Obama is the last time in 2008, not even 2012, but Obama 08 is the last time the Democrats actually actively ran on progressive policies rather than run away from progressive policies. And the results are right there for those who want to fucking check it out. Like he won the Cuban vote in Florida. Okay. Barack Obama in 2008 won the Cuban vote in Florida. That has never happened before, and it has never happened since, and it will never happen again. Okay? How did he do that? Young Cubans voted for him because he was charismatic enough to be able to carry a message of progress and a message of change and a message of hope. He had a massive grassroots mobilization movement, Obama for America, that he said he was going to use not as like a door knocking operation just for himself, but also utilized to bully Republicans down the line to like pass legislation. He of course didn't do any of that once he was in office, and immediately hit the center once he came into power. But in terms of like winning elections, it's shocking to me that the Democrats don't even try to communicate more progressive messages and will constantly run scared and run to the middle, not realizing that spells business as usual politics for a lot of people, and that the very momentum that they currently have is because they kind of did the change of pace, the no longer are we running scared shit. You know what I mean? Like, and now they're cutting against that by just going back to the basics and running to the center and trying to justify it for some electoral calculus.
Let's talk, I guess, about more personal stuff. Feed the fans, if you will. You stream like over 8 hours a day, almost every day. You travel, and yet you still do commentary. You go out live again. How? I mean, you've said plenty of times that the cause drives you and that there's nothing else you'd rather do. That we know and we believe. So by how, I mean literally how. Take us through an average day at work. Do you socialize, go out, family time? Walk us through, because from the perspective of somebody who does YouTube, this show, and now streams only like 3 times a week, it's really daunting. Still the best job in the world. Don't get me wrong, but sometimes a bit insane to balance. You do this 7 times a week. So let's go. You wake up. What's next? You come on the Deprogram. Okay, what's next?
Yeah. So I wake up. And I immediately start listening to NPR, New York Times, like daily reports and start reading like what the top news stories are of the day. And I either go and train at my friend's like dad's house that he has like converted the backyard into a gym, like an outdoor gym, or I like I did this morning, take my dog out to the park and go play basketball, run drills on my own. And basically, after that, I come back, that's usually an hour or 2 hours. I come back, I either take calls or I do more reading, do more listening, and I get ready. I prep for the day, and I take a shower, and I start streaming at 11, and that's it.
So when did you
After
wake up?
that-
When did you wake up? At like 6, 7?
Yeah. Yeah, I usually
Holy
wake up
shit.
around 6 or 7, depending on the day, depending on what I need to do, but usually around the same time. Like, I probably get out of bed. I wake up at 6, get out of bed at 7.
Okay, and then you start the stream, and it ends around what time?
Ends around 8 p.m. And, it's usually like a 8-hour, 9-hour stream that I do. And then after I'm done with the stream, that's usually family time. My mom and dad, they either stay with me. They're staying with me right now.
Oh, very nice.
I moved my mom out here as well. So like,
Lovely.
I hang out with them. We watch Netflix. I try to find something that like all of us can be interested in, which is usually very hard. Currently watching the Wyatt Earp documentary on Netflix. So that's fun. And then after that, I usually have dinner and I go to sleep. And wake up, do it all again.
Oh,
Very boring.
Hey, it's not. You cover something new every day. You sometimes do the live streams. Go back to the live streams, IRL live streams, the original of Twitch back in its unhinged days. At least, for example, the DNC ones were very interesting. You met Amy from Democracy Now. I am hella fucking jealous, man. Hella fucking jealous.
Amy Gibbon, my goat.
Absolute go.
That was incredible. I almost teared up. They were like, she had no idea who I was, but like everyone on her team did know, and they were like stoked that I was a fan. And they were like telling her, no, this is like a big, he's like a big content creator. He's like a big person in the political space in the leftist politics. And she was like, oh, okay, they're telling me you're like a big influencer. But it was incredible. I mean, she's the goat. I love Democracy Now.
I guess she's got it figured out. The old head's got it figured out. She does great work. She pushes the idea, and then she seems to completely 100% log off. While we just continue being in tune 24/7 to an extent.
I was gonna say about the work schedule thing or the stream schedule thing. It's I love the progression of working a regular job, and then afterwards you do something on the side, and then afterwards you slowly gradually turn into doing the side thing into a full-time thing, and like, oh wow, now I can be my own boss. I can select my set my own schedule, all that stuff, and then slowly but surely you start overworking yourself.
Even more than you would.
Yeah,
exactly right. Which is the interesting, because there's a lot of people who work 10, 12, 14, 16-hour shifts. I'm one of them. Working quote unquote regular quote unquote jobs. So it's not the most out of the ordinary thing, but it's just the idea that switching over and then having control of your own schedule, and then still doing the stuff that you need to do, and it's for a good purpose, for the cause and whatnot. It's very nice to see. But also on the flip side, there's no union for what you're doing. There's no what's it called? Nobody who's gonna hit the hard brake and be like, no, legally you can't keep doing this. You're overworking yourself.
Yeah, but like that. But that's the thing. Like, I definitely do it. I overdo it for sure, and a lot of people can't keep up with it. But as far as I understand, like, at least in my experience, like when I had a real job, when I was doing sales at the Young Turks, right? Like, I hated Sunday nights, the Sunday scaries that every single person experiences, and it was mostly because like there is no control over your own life when you work for someone else, right?
Yeah.
Unless you're working in like a unique structure where you have a sense of purpose and autonomy and like an actual genuine stake in the company. You're usually, it's completely outside of your control, like things that you have to do as a whole as adult. And I think that the freedom
Hold on.
that I
Are you
have.
advocating for workers' ownership of the means of production? Is that what you're talking?
I would never do that. No, of course not. I'm a DNC operative.
Exactly.
No, but what I was gonna say is like, even I think one of the greatest things that people don't realize is that, like, yeah, I stream like crazy. I work like crazy, but it doesn't feel like work to me. I love what I do. And some might even say, what you're doing is not real work. Fine. Sure. Okay. Whatever. But what a lot of people never actually experience is that, like, even the fact that I could just stop tomorrow if I wanted to, like, I could literally just not go live today. Or if I wanted to, I could go live at 1 p.m. today, right? I make my own hours, right? Like, I have a schedule and I stick to it, but I don't have to. And that freedom, knowing full well that I can do whatever the fuck I want, is so goddamn liberating. Like, even if I don't apply that freedom, even if I don't take advantage of that freedom, the fact that I have it alone,
You have it. Yeah.
takes so much of this weight off of your shoulders. And that is, I think, something that I hope everyone can taste one day. And obviously a capitalist would look at that and go, yeah, that's why you got to be an entrepreneur, dog. Like, that's why you got to make this leap. And it's like, no, I think you can make that leap on your own if you were to work in a cooperative style structure, or in a work structure where you have more autonomy, where you can actually have a say in your own scheduling, and genuinely feel like your output is pushing the company in a positive direction that, like, you will see benefits from.
Generally, and I think this is kind of the crux of old-timey organizing. It's the fact that there should be the drive to unionize, number one. There should be the drive to collectivize your workplace. And also always advocate for continuous improvements. There is no end all and be all. Like right now we have the 8-hour workday. Yeah, that was whittled down from 16, 14, 10, 12, 10, and now we're down to 8. That doesn't mean we should stop. You should be advocating for 6 hours. And then afterwards, as productivity grows and with technological development, you should advocate for even shorter weeks, because the point of life is not to just, slave away for the sake of profit. This is a very tired, like, left, intro baby leftist point, but really, the idea that sometimes you meet regular people and you're like, hey, yeah, you should be advocating within your organizational spaces for 6-hour workdays. And then people will be like, oh, well, I mean, like, what is going to happen? Where are you going to find people to, fill in for the shortages that will occur? I'm like, are you listening to yourself? Are you fucking listening to yourself? Have you taken a look at record profits across every fucking industry? No, guys. Sunday scaries don't exist if you work weekends. Right.
I mean, the old classic. You don't hate Mondays, you hate capitalism. A lot of people have, because they have absolutely never experienced the joy of having full control over your working hours, or even more importantly, in my opinion, the joy of finding purpose, of actually feeling what you are doing is impacting either your community or the product you're developing or whatever the fuck it is, for you not to be alienated away from what your hands and what your mind kind of give back to the world. And most people have absolutely never experienced that, so it's completely fucking borderline impossible to even pitch something to them that sounds like absolute magic. But as people that might have experienced it, especially purpose, it kind of becomes, in my opinion, another expansion of what your purpose is supposed to be, and that is reminding people that there is an alternative to a life where, as Hasan said, you're laying in bed on a fucking Sunday night and you're like, Jesus fucking Christ, I have to do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Thursday for the rest of my life, for the next fucking 50 years until I hopefully retire, which most likely will not, because retiring is going to be a myth in 20 years. So it's just, go on.
That like trying to find your own off time or politically advocating for it. I think a lot of people don't realize it is because, of course, they're overworked currently, but they don't realize the significant improvement. There's a reason they don't want to like do the test runs that are done are just done. They see the improvement in general efficiency, but then they just kind of pull back, because once you taste it, right, it's really kind of hard to go back. I'm a personal example on my end is I'm doing rounds currently at psychiatry, and psychiatry has regular hours generally, right? I'm gonna have some night shifts and whatnot, weekend shifts, but generally it's not the emergency ward hours that I regularly work, where my shortest week is 56 hours. And just this going from basically working every weekend and long ass days during the week to, hey, I have weekends free, and also after like 5 in the evening I'm basically done. Right?
Feels like
really,
magic. It's a completely different life, because it is a completely different life.
And then I think about like the next step. Like, imagine if it was the same thing, but I'm done at 3 or something. Fuck. Yani, genuinely, I would not. That's kind of my point. Like, instead of number one, like quote unquote labor shaming other people, it's shit that exists only online for the most part. But it's like, oh, you think your job is hard? First of all, fuck you. We're all workers of solidarity with each other.
But that's so stupid too, because it's like they almost like there's a sense of pride in like how difficult your work is.
Dog. Yeah.
Soft hands, brother.
Which, I mean, I understand the sense of pride in your work, right? Like working with your hands or whatever. Like, I get that. Like a sense of pride in what you do, a sense of accomplishment.
But you could also
what
see
I
your
don't
children.
understand is when people are what I don't understand is like when people like think that it's a good thing that you're getting fucked over. Like, I'm getting fucked over way harder by my bosses than you. Like, fuck you. And it's like, dude, what are you talking about? Like, that is awful. Like, we want that to not exist.
Everyone has that friend that, you try to hit up, and they tell you they're busy, but like a flex. They don't tell you like, ah, shit, man, I would love to, but, I'm too busy. They literally say busy as if it's something to actually brag about. Oh my God, I'm getting hammered by my boss every fucking week. I have achieved the pinnacle of human civilization.
And it's a part of a...
Okay, that's me though. not as a flex, but like I am just like legitimately crazy
it's
busy
different when you're but you don't say it to your friends like, hey, I am better than you because you're not as busy. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
or maybe
no,
you
I
do.
don't think
maybe
it's
you do.
No, I don't. I don't think it's a good thing.
That's one thing. And also another thing is another part is the like labor conditioning that a lot of people have. It's been engendered for 200 years now, where the entirety of your self-worth and sense of productivity and just worthiness of existence is supposed to come from the fact that you slave away for 8 or 10 or 12 or whatever, how many hours do you work, when life is not meant to be creating value for shareholders, but supposed to be actively lived. And this is a statistically significant and observable scientific fact. You spend time having better community connections, having more time to spend with the social relations that you do care about, having more time to yourself, your own interests and hobbies, for exercise and just time out in nature. All of this over your regular work, no matter what it is. If you work in sales, if you're manufacturing, if you are like some government bureaucrat, if you're in medicine like me, at every single step of the way, the point is that you're not supposed to work yourself until you're fucking nothing, because nobody will thank you for it at the end of the day. You can die tomorrow and then you're an empty name in a schedule, and then, right? But this is like the humanity of the leftist message that sometimes gets missed. And I think we also kind of fall into this a little bit, because we have, across the podcast, and I would say, Hasan, with your videos too, or your content, your streams and whatnot, we kind of fall into the pitfalls of, okay, the major geopolitical, this and that's happening, the local government nonsense that's happening, macroeconomic trends that are happening, and then we delve into the analysis, and you kind of just lose the humanity of what it is we're advocating for, which is we want people to just be happier and healthier by virtue of better, working conditions, which is what we're created for, evolutionarily, genetically, by God, whatever you want to believe in. And this is just it's a shame, I think, that because of the seriousness of the quote unquote message, we end up kind of like losing the substance.
Beautifully put. We're supposed to create a society which at some point looks back to the way we are living right now and considers it absolutely barbaric. Anything other than that would be a failure. And I know that's pushing the scales a bit too high, but that's all of human history. If we were to interact with somebody from fucking feudal England, they would look like a space alien to us, and we would probably look the same way to them. We are made of the same flesh and have the same same brain matter, yet we were raised by different systems, and therefore we were molded in completely different creatures to an extent. Which I guess kind of leads me to one of the last questions, because I know you might need to stream soon. Let's talk shop specifically. The wider class consciousness movement has absolutely no control over mainstream media. I'm not saying something too radical here, close to zero. What we're doing online, though, I hope you will agree, is quite the opposite. Viewer-funded creators from all over the world and the spectrum, both the spectrums, are slowly creating pretty large spaces where socialist ideas spread pretty quickly. Obviously, it's nothing compared to what the right is doing, like the Daily Wire with hundreds of millions in revenue, but it would be uncharitable to say that there hasn't been a growing, unfortunately decentralized, but still a growing left-wing alternative on the net. So what do you think is the cherry on top of this organic agitation movement? I don't think you would have woken up this morning thinking that you'll be called a cherry. What do you think the future holds for us? I mean, the options are plenty, from eventually getting outright banned to succumbing to the profit motive, becoming nothing but spectacle, or in contrast, taking the hope pill that maybe this online left thing will have an ever-increasing impact on the spread of class consciousness, eventually creating a real information and content alternative to corporate or right-wing media. Basically, where do you see the online left? I know it's a cringe term, but we're among friends, so you get what the fuck I mean. Where do you see it in the next 10 years?
I mean, it's been growing and growing steadily, and I think that a major reason as to why it grew was not necessarily that like we're really good or anything, but more so that there was a massive person with mainstream prominence that launched a very successful outsider political candidacy, like political campaign that I think really which really created this like base of support for people seeking out this sort of content, seeking out this sort of worldview. And that was Bernie Sanders. Like, I think that
in the US,
Bernie's movement played a major role in this. So in the absence of that, I don't know. I don't know if like this momentum will continue growing unless like we are able to, and this is something that I work on quite a bit, we are able to like consistently keep pushing for labor organizing and try to take a bottom up approach that is like somewhat successful in terms of creating like other mechanisms of pressure against the Democratic Party, because like relying on the Democratic Party internally is not going to work in that regard. But I don't think it's I just like, no matter what happens, just like you mentioned, this is never going to be an AstroTurf movement. This will never be a movement that relies on, big ticket donors, because ultimately what billionaire is going to give money to a guy that says that, billionaires shouldn't exist, right? Yeah. That it's a matter of policy failure ultimately, that like billionaires even exist to begin with. So like, I think, we're all trying our best out here. Overall, it seems to be growing. And I think it will continue to grow, but as far as like having a massive outsized impact, that can only happen if we are continuing to advocate, to organize around issues, community organizing, but also labor organizing. More importantly, like creating mechanisms of pressure. I think that is what is necessary. That's what I advocate for in general, for that reason, because in the absence of that, then it's just a bunch of dudes talking shit.
Yeah.
Like
nothing
there's
to
no
really
real
reinforce it.
There's no real material change. Like this is something this is why I also love going to the protests, to see so many people. Like when I went to the pro-Palestinian demonstrations outside the DNC, like organizers from different groups like Students for Justice for Palestine, SDS, like many other groups, like they came up to me and were like, you played a formative role in my radicalization. You played a formative role in like me understanding this issue. Like there were people who were in attendance that were like, I didn't know anything about this stuff before I heard you covering it. And now I'm here. Now I'm like protesting at the DNC. And that is really
That's the
valuable
fucking
to
point.
me.
That's the fucking
Yeah,
point. Right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because if that didn't exist, if that did not exist, then it would just be me talking shit to a camera, right? Like that's why I do what I do. Because at the end of the day, I think I'm trying desperately to create like a resilient form of pressure that will continue, that will continue to work even after I'm long gone. You know what I mean? After I'm dead. So that's what I think we should continue focusing on, I guess, and that's where I see the left like being a force of change, even the online left in general.
I was gonna say one thing, which is something that Hugo said many times, which I really like. A lot of the times, there's a perception by people who are maybe don't like the work that we do or don't think that we're quote unquote doing enough, and it's because they miss the fact that we are like in previous revolutions, for example, or left-wing movements, we are the equivalent of like agitprop. We're the people who put up the posters, basically. We're the people who would sit up on a fucking crate of something. And while things are in motion, we're just like reading out the news and giving some basic analysis of it. This is not the, party program. This is not part of some dedicated, organized group that has a plan in motion or whatever, right? We are like drops in a bucket of a much larger forming movement that is internationally at different levels of development, but is nonetheless marching forward. The point of our work, though, is to help people, is to add numbers to this, and to also hopefully add a little bit of understanding and push people towards the right direction of where they should be reading, how they should carry out analysis, etc. But for them to eventually do the work, and also for larger organizations to focus on the agitate, educate, organize bits. And then in the end, hopefully something good will come of it, right?
Yeah.
But yeah.
We have a weird saying in Serbo-Croatian. I'll probably butcher it in the translation, but like the difference between a crazy guy on the street and a bishop is that there's 500 people listening to the bishop and nobody to the crazy person in the street. If we are just here lambasting, gathering our fucking subscriber counts and views and fucking ad revenue, but we're at the end of the day just screaming into the void, we are nothing but a bunch of just crazy guys screaming into the void. But if there's even one guy a month, hell, one guy a fucking year that actually enters an organization, starts one, does any sort of organizing on the ground from the work that you've done, then you're doing actual agitation, actual agitprop, as they used to say back in the day. If it doesn't come to that, respectfully, you either need to improve your message or you're not doing it for the quote-unquote right reasons at all. By right, I mean for the so-called cause, as LARPy as it might sound. And with that, I think it would be a nice kind of point to stop. But before we do, you can see behind me, I have Zins. And what the fuck are you which ones are you using right now? The coffee ones, the 3 or the 6?
Don't use
I
any
have
of it.
both.
Sorry, go on.
I have 3 milligrams. I have 6 milligrams. I like swap it out periodically throughout the day, but my favorite is spearmint and coffee. Those are my 2 favorites. Those are the ones I have back there.
Spearmint is disgusting. I have the bright spearmint, but the European ones. A lot of my fucking chatters say that you can order European ones as well. There's like 10 milligrams.
That's what I've heard.
20
Yeah,
milligrams.
there's 12 milligram ones too, but I don't want to.
There's
get
100
there.
milligram ones is where I live.
What? Okay,
yeah.
that's insane.
Yeah. I tried. It just everything burns. Just everything burns. But yeah, I wanted to.
Probably feels so good.
Yeah. Were you ever a smoker before, or you just?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay, same here. Well, on this extreme off topic to end the story, thank you very much, Hasan. This was very exciting, and I believe is going to be very interesting to our lovely viewers, who I encourage one more time to check out the Patreon, because without you guys' lovely support, none of this would be possible. In return, you get lots of benefits like early episodes, 2 exclusive episodes a month, and access to our Discord community. And after thanking all our lovely patrons, I want to thank Hasan for taking the time to come out here. This is the 2nd year you coming in. I will bother you like crazy next year, and this will be an annual thing if you agree on it. Please tell our audience one more time where they can find your streams and your highlight uploads, etc., and we can, and any final words or whatever, as if it's your funeral, and we can slowly wrap this up.
I am live every day at twitch.tv/Hasanabi. I have a YouTube page where I upload some of the highlights, some of like the most important pieces of news from the day in real time, pretty quick. So, you can check that out on my YouTube at Hasanabi. I'm on Twitter at Hasan the Hun. I'm on TikTok and Instagram at Hasan D. Piker. So many different usernames. I've never changed them.
All the links will be in the description.
Yeah, I don't really care to, but yeah, it's just, I say this all the time, but you just got to keep pushing. You just got to keep putting your best foot forward, no matter what, even if change seems impossible. There are decades where nothing happens, and then there are weeks where decades happen, obviously, and before you know it, things might change in a way that you never thought possible, and that you should always maintain revolutionary optimism.
That's exactly right.
Beautiful.
All right. With all that being said, this has been the Deprogram. I'm Hakim.
I'm Yugopnik.
I'm Hasanabi, and I'll see you again next year.
Hey, there we go.
Ooh, let's fucking go.
You have no choice.